Okay, we are going live now. Yes, we are live on YouTube right now.
Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to our fourth webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. My name is Sabine Heinz, and I'm the person in charge for our webinars. On this wonderful 4th of October, I'm delighted that you have come, and I would like to introduce our guests. Bernard Foying, our president, welcome. Adriano Ottino, one of our vice presidents, former president of SRI and one of our founders. And last but not least, and more cordially, our presenter today, Dr. Robert Zubrin. A very warm welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes.
Before I leave the stage to you, I would like to say a few words to our audience to introduce you a little bit. Robert Zubrin is president of Pioneer Astronautics. He's also the founder and president of the Mars Society, an international organization dedicated to furthering the exploration and settlement of Mars by both public and private means. This is what our goals are too, not only Mars, also space. Robert Zubrin is the inventor of several unique concepts for space propulsion and exploration. The author of over 200 published technical and non-technical papers in the field. In addition to the many technical publications, Dr. Zubrin is the author of 7 books. I guess these are more now, or not? 8?
Well, it depends which ones you count, but around 7 relating to space.
Okay.
Not counting all the translations in all languages of the world.
Yeah, and then it is more. The stage is yours. We are very happy to have you here, and we are very curious to listen to your lecture.
If I can just say a few words, because
Yes.
I had the pleasure to meet Robert Zubrin, and we have worked together as he has built this Mars Desert Research Station, and we used it yearly with our Young Moon Mars team to train candidate astronauts, scientists, engineers to learn how to live and work on Mars. And it was a great choice of a place and also great facility to conduct research. And we have published a number of scientific papers that help us to prepare mission to Mars, robotic and even human. So it was great that you have the vision to build this facility, and that is also used as a training ground for all explorers of Earth towards Mars. So, Robert, it's a really pleasure to have you with the Space Renaissance International webinar.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here.
And a very welcome by myself, a warm welcome. Bob, you and me, we met together in 2001 at Toulouse. If you remember, we had a dinner together. And then we corresponded and so on. And we had your great participation to our Congress. And we look forward to the Mars Society convention in maybe one month or so.
No,
and maybe we will have a possibility for our new president, Bernard, to present a paper. I don't know. We will be very happy to participate. So very welcome to this webinar, Bob. Please.
Thank you. Okay. So my topic for today is the case for space, how the revolution in spaceflight is opening a future of unlimited possibilities. And that's a lot to talk about in an hour. It's 3 things: the case, the revolution, the infinite possibilities. Won't be able to cover it all or even any part of that adequately. But fortunately, I have written a book on the subject. And if people find what I have to say about these subjects interesting, they can get the book. It's available on Amazon. And now not only in English, but in Ukrainian, Polish, and Korean as well. Unfortunately, not French and German and Italian. We need to get those countries involved, but it's out there. Okay. Anyway, so look, let's start with the revolution. This is what's most obvious. We're seeing this unfolding now before our eyes. The activities of particularly of SpaceX, which has introduced partially reusable Falcon 9s, and then even more percent reusable Falcon Heavies, and now is working on a fully reusable vehicle they call the Starship, which will have the capacity equal to a Saturn V moon rocket, but perhaps 1% the launch cost because it is a fully reusable vehicle. And this is occurring. It's quite the phenomenon. From Sputnik to 1970 or so, the cost of space launch declined sharply as we mastered the basic technology of the field. But from 1970 to 2010, the cost of space launch essentially stayed the same, $10,000 a kilogram. It's like a law of physics or something. And but since 2010, as a result of the introduction of both new ways of doing business and reusable technology by SpaceX, cost of space launch has fallen by a factor of 5, from down to about $2,000 a kilogram. And if Starship is successful, we'll be looking at several $100s a kilogram to reach orbit. And also the largest capacity launches that we've seen since the Saturn V as well. What Musk and his team of musketeers have done here, therefore, is not only introduce some extremely valuable pieces of space technology, but they've proven a point that it is possible for a well-led team of entrepreneurs or a well-led entrepreneurial team, rather, of engineers to create new space technology and, 1/3 the time, 1/10 the development cost that had been deemed necessary and only doable by governments of major countries, and furthermore, even done things they had deemed impossible altogether. And as a result of this, they have launched, ignited an international space race. I'm aware of at least 5 companies in China, entrepreneurial companies that have serious backing, who, as we speak, are trying to develop vehicles that look a lot like the Falcon 9. There, of course, is also the Blue Origin company. And there's a Rocket Lab, which is an interesting company because it was created not by billionaires with spare money, but by working engineers who managed to secure investors. And they have reached orbit now repeatedly. And here's the thing, this is a New Zealand company, and New Zealand doesn't even have a space program, yet New Zealand has reached orbit through entrepreneurial initiative. And basically the entrepreneurial nature of this activity opens it up to every country. You don't need to be a major space power. And within Europe, there are companies can do this independent of the large group decision-making process of the European Space Agency and so forth. So this is huge. Now, the cheaper space launch gets, the more space launches there will be. That's simple economics. The more space launches there will be, the cheaper spacecraft will become because they will be being produced in larger numbers. But not only that, the more capable they will be, not only because the chance for evolutionary advance will be more frequent with more launches, but also because the cheaper space launches, the less conservative spacecraft designers need to be. If the launch is $1 billion, few people are going to take a chance on saving $1 million by using a lighter weight battery or something. They're going to say, has this been used before? What's its heritage? We'll go with what's proven. Very few chances will be taken. On the other hand, if the launch costs a few $1 million, well then the opportunities and the incentives for innovation are much higher, and the restraints against it are much less. So we're going to see advance in spacecraft technology. So they will become cheaper, lighter, more effective for the same mass and cost. So therefore, not only is the launch cheaper, but the spacecraft are more capable. And This means that a variety of space business plans that previously the numbers didn't add up will start adding up. And therefore, new classes of space enterprise will become practical that weren't before. And this will then also accelerate the expansion of the number of available launches, and which feeds then into cheaper space launch, cheaper spacecraft, et cetera. It's a virtuous spiral. And then there is the possibility of opening up radically new types of markets. And I'm talking in particular about intercontinental travel, which of course is inconceivable with expendable launch vehicles. But with reusable launch vehicles, this becomes interesting. And you know, there were 100 space launches in the world, roughly speaking, last year. And SpaceX got about 30 of them, which is amazing if you think of one medium-sized company getting 30% of the world launch market and the majority of the free world launch market. But as a result of the cheapening of space launch, we're soon going to see 200 launches a year, 300 launches a year. But there are hundreds of intercontinental flights every hour. And were even 10% of them be addressed by intercontinental space flight, anywhere to anywhere in less than an hour, we're talking about several orders of magnitude expansion in the number of space launches. And we're talking about expansion of the number of operating reusable launch vehicles by orders of magnitude, and the availability of used reusable launch vehicles to be bought at lower costs for various other enterprises, including notably the settlement of Mars. Okay, with cheap space launch, much cheaper than before. We're talking about making practical things that people had talked about before, orbital research labs. They talked about doing that with the shuttle and the space station, but the numbers didn't make any sense. The costs were much too high. But now the idea of private companies launching their own orbital research labs where they have unlimited possibilities to do their research without having to deal with space agency bureaucracies or the possibility of insecure data with competitors, they have their own, this will all become possible. You know, if we're talking about launching an orbital research lab for tens of millions of dollars, this is well within the resources of a Fortune 500 company. Okay, frankly, it's within the resources of some of the best endowed universities who build buildings and sports stadiums and so forth for larger costs than that. So this is what we're going to see. And then, yes, space hotels, if there's reusable launch vehicles doing intercontinentals, they can do up and down to orbit. This has all become possible. But, and certainly, any number of space exploration missions, both scientific missions to the outer solar system, and also lunar and Mars missions, these all become much more possible. But also so does space settlement. Okay, we're talking, and ultimately, look, I mean, frankly, why are we interested in space? Certainly space has applications that you don't have to be visionary to appreciate. It is very important for national defense, for weather prediction, and so on. But the people who developed the vision of human expansion into space, and the people who are furthering it today, who are committed to that vision, are not in it because it is a necessary adjunct to a competent military or a weather prediction. Okay, we're in it because of a larger vision, which is a vision of a larger humanity, of a humanity that has expanded its potentials to many worlds. And this is going to become possible. I mean, I met with Musk about a year and a half ago, and he told me he thought he could produce Starships for $10 million each. And in fact, you know, what they've set up in Boca Chica is they're not building a ship, they're building a shipyard. They're turning out Starship prototypes for costs on that order at a rate of about one a month, and they think they can increase that significantly to one a week. And if these things become used for intercontinental traffic, there'll be a market for hundreds of them. And then, of course, there'll be the Chinese knockoffs. and other people, because once Musk proves this basic type of technology is feasible, there'll be plenty of other people who get in the game. There's no stopping that. Laws of physics are the same for everyone. And so they'll be available. But even if you take the $10 million figure, if that can transport 100 people to Mars, if the colonists want to buy the ship, it's $100,000 each. Okay, if they want to buy the ship, which they might be well advised to do, by the way, to send it to Mars, keep it for starter housing on Mars. And I think, frankly, a Starship on Mars is more valuable than one on Earth, and especially if they don't even have to buy it new, they can buy it used. Astrolinea Mexicana intercontinental Starship towards the end of its service life, pick it up, fly it one way to Mars. I mean, this is what's going to happen. So this is now going to become a real potential for humanity. Now, most of us in the space business, okay, are looking, frankly, at a more near-term objective regarding humans on Mars than settlement. We're looking at human explorers on Mars as a first step. But certainly the available of Starships will make human exploration of Mars a much more realistic possibility. And while it is true that Musk very frequently exaggerates the proximity of his various accomplishments, that is excessively optimistic as to when the Starships will reach orbit and so forth. And in fact, according to his original predictions, it should have reached orbit last year, and then he predicted this year. And I think the chances are fair, it could be next year. I think the chances are very high, it'll be by 2024. And if Starships are traveling to Earth orbit in the year 2024, if this is part of the reality that we're living in, then someone's going to be elected president in 2024, and he or she is going to turn to their advisors and say, look at this guy wants to send people to Mars, and he's got these things, and they're flying around. And can this be done? If we got together with him, could we get people to Mars by the end of my second term? And the answer to that is going to be yes, of course. And will it require $1 trillion? No, it can probably be done within NASA's existing budget. There's a number of things that are needed that he doesn't have. We need Mars spacesuits, Mars vehicles, surface nuclear reactors, ISRU technology. But he's got the biggest piece here, the transportation system. If we got together with him, public-private partnership, we could do this. We could be on Mars by 2030. And I think that is actually what is going to happen. Okay, that is, by making this mission practical, Musk is going to make it sellable, and it will sell. Okay, and so there's going to be a great revival in the space exploration programs of NASA and ESA and so forth. Yes, a space renaissance, if you will, but by creating enabling technologies, then it will create the possibilities. The possibilities will lead the agencies. Okay, now. And then, as I said, settlement is going to become a practical reality. And humans will expand into space, okay? We are at the beginning of the true space age, a space age in which space travel is as important for human activity as air travel is now. That's what this is. Now, so that's the revolution. Now, let's talk a little bit about why. Why is this so important? Well, I can think of a number of important reasons. They break down for the knowledge, for the challenge, for our survival, and for the future. Now, the knowledge, this is something that the space agencies do talk about. It is the main reason that they can perceive as to why this activity is justified. And the things they say about this are true. But to elaborate this a bit, most of our knowledge of physics has actually come from astronomy. Okay, classical physics, the law of gravity, it came from astronomy. Much of electromagnetism from astronomy, relativity from astronomy, nuclear fusion was discovered through astronomy. Okay, and there are new laws of physics, not new, the laws have always been there, but new to us new discoveries in fundamental physics waiting to be discovered, and the best lab in the universe is the universe, and the best place to see it is outside of the Earth's atmosphere. And certainly creating frequent low-cost access to space will enable all sorts of new grand observatories in space and the potential for great discoveries in physics, which of course expand humans' power over nature. Biology. We don't know really that much about biology right now. We know about one kind of biology, Earth biology. All Earth biology uses the same information system, RNA, DNA, okay? And while there's a priori arguments as to why carbon and water should be the foundations of life because of their various fundamental properties, there's no a priori reason why the alphabet of life should be RNA and DNA. Now, you know, I am an American and my native language is English, and here I am speaking to people whose native languages are French and German and Italian, and we all use the Latin alphabet, okay, because we all hail from countries that were either part of the Roman Empire or became literate under the guidance of the Roman Church. And there is our alphabet is the Latin alphabet. And if all you knew about was Western Europe and its outposts in the Americas, you would think that the Latin alphabet is the alphabet, okay? But of course, if you go a bit east, you run into a different alphabet. You run into the Cyrillic alphabet. It's used in Russia. Now, it is somewhat different, although it works on the same set of principles. It's pretty easy for any Westerner to understand the Cyrillic alphabet. They can say, well, this letter here that, you know, looks like an H is actually an N, and so forth. And you can get it, okay? And even the Hebrew and Arabic alphabets, whose letters have an alien appearance compared to the Latin alphabet, are readily understood by Westerners because they work on the same set of principles, since all of these alphabets, the Latin, the Cyrillic, the Hebrew, the Arabic, are all ultimately descended from the Phoenician alphabet, okay? They have a common origin. But if you go further east, okay, to China, you come to a different kind of information system. And it's not clear whether it should really be called an alphabet at all. It serves the same purpose as an alphabet. You can write books in it, in the Chinese characters, but it doesn't work on the same principle at all of the Phoenician system. It does not use symbols to sound out the sounds of words. It's based on pictograms that have been simplified and combined in various ingenious ways, but it does the same thing, okay? But in a very different way. And I'm not prepared to say which is superior, because frankly, I'm unacquainted with any details of the Chinese alphabet, except to know that it's very different. And the, well, you know, look, the first computers we had were mechanical things that work with levers and gears. Then we went to vacuum tubes and electric relays, and then ultimately silicon. And now, and these created radically new capabilities of computers. And who knows, people talking about quantum computers and DNA computers and this and that. Could be all sorts of new information systems. Well, if we have, you know, the great technological revolutions of the 21st century are going to include biotechnology. We've just learned to read the genetic code, and we're beginning to learn to write the genetic code and be able to program microorganisms, which after all are the real nanomachines, self-reproducing machines, and we can program them. Or what if we found out ways to create self-reproducing machines that had different information systems that had superior potentials to the Latin alphabet of DNA and RNA? We may discover this in space among life forms that have a separate origin than Earth life, okay? A different alphabet, Chinese alphabet of life, and other novel alphabets, novel to us anyway, and information. So the only way that you can really understand languages or understand linguistics as if you can know more than one language. The only way we can understand biology is if we can know about more than one biology. Okay, so we're going to get this by going into space. Then there is the challenge. I think that civilizations are like individuals. We grow when we challenge ourselves. We stagnate when we do not. A bold space program opening up new vistas, grand adventures in space would be an invitation to intellectual adventure to every person in that society, in particular every young person. Learn your science and you could be an explorer of new worlds. We saw that in America in the 60s. We doubled, tripled the number of science graduates at every level, high school, college, PhD. We've benefited from that intellectual capital ever since. I believe the effect of that today would be much bigger, because not only would get millions of little boys playing with rocket fuel and robots in the basement to their parents' distress, we'd also have at this day and age, in addition, millions of little girls creating even more distress with their rocket fuel and robots in the basement. And so this is important. Then there is survival. You know, Carl Sagan used to say that all species either become spacefaring or extinct. And this is true because the Earth is in space and everything in space is moving around, and in fact, at rather high velocities under the impact of gravitational forces. And since this flight traffic is unguided, they periodically crash into each other, with the smaller objects being utterly destroyed and the larger objects getting a hell of a whack. And of course, this has been a cause of repeated mass extinctions on Earth. And we can protect ourselves against this by becoming spacefaring. Now, I do not see much merit in the argument that some people have given, is that we should go into space so that when the Earth is destroyed by an asteroid, there'll be some survivors somewhere else. I think that this is a bad argument to make. We're not going into space to desert the Earth. We're going into space to protect the Earth. And by becoming a spacefaring species, we'll have the capability of doing that. And then finally, there is this issue of the future. And the future breaks down into two parts. There is the ultimate future and there is the near future. Now, in terms of the ultimate future, if we go into space, we're creating a much grander future for humanity, a humanity on thousands of planets orbiting thousands of stars in this region of the galaxy. That means thousands, tens of thousands of new cultures, new nations, new languages, new literatures, new ideas in social thought, innumerable contributions to technology and invention and science, and histories of great deeds that will inspire people to do even greater things. And that is something grand and magnificent. And if you have it in your power to create something grand and magnificent, then you should, okay? Okay, but what about the near future? Well, the near future is greatly affected by what our idea of the ultimate future is, okay? And right now, on Earth, okay, people are talking about imminent threats to humanity. And they mention things like global warming. Some people talk about resource exhaustion. Some talk about overpopulation. Now, the global warming is certainly real, but it is not, in fact, an imminent threat to humanity. And I do not believe that resource exhaustion or overpopulation are real at all. But there is something that is an imminent threat to humanity, okay? And it's the same thing that caused massive disasters to humanity in the 20th century, okay? And that is war. War caused not by overpopulation or resource exhaustion. Europe was not running out of resources in 1914 or 1939. Nothing of the sort was true. It certainly wasn't overpopulated. You know, it was caused by bad ideas. And in particular, one bad idea, which came in a variety of forms. And what that bad idea is that there isn't enough for everyone. And therefore, we need to kill them to make sure we get what is there. And it is this idea that almost caused the collapse of civilization in the 20th century. You know, Hitler, 1939, Germany needs living space. The laws of existence require uninterrupted killing so that the better may live. This was all nonsense. Germany did not need living space. Germany today is smaller than the Third Reich and has a larger population, and yet it has a vastly higher standard of living. Why? Not because the Germans were successful in their project of invading other countries and stealing other people's farms and cows after they killed them. That project was unsuccessful, and had it been successful, it wouldn't have done much for them at all. Okay. It is because of the advance of science and technology, which has been a global project to which Germans, to be sure, have contributed, as have people of every other country, including very notably people from races that Hitler was trying to exterminate. Okay, and so that is what has done it. So the human progress did not occur by reducing the number of contributing nations in the world. It actually occurred due to the activity of all these nations and their increased numbers, because the more people there are, the more inventors there are, and the more inventors, the more inventions, and inventions are cumulative. And this is why the standard of living of the world actually has gone up as population has gone up rather than down. Okay, and but this idea remains a threat. It remains the primary threat to humanity. Okay, and I mean, I happen to know for a fact, because I have talked with them, that there are people in very responsible positions in the American national security establishment who believe that war with China is inevitable. Why? Well, because there's 1.3 billion of them in the sea, and if they all start having cars and driving around like Americans and Europeans, there won't be enough oil in the world. Don't you get it? Okay, and you could bet your bottom dollar that there are people exactly like them over in Beijing who look at this issue from the other side of the chessboard and think comparable thoughts, but with a different population that needs to be crushed. Okay. Now, if this kind of thinking is allowed to prevail, there will be war, and it will be much more devastating than the wars in the 20th century because our weaponry is far more effective. But it shouldn't. It should not be allowed to prevail. It needs to be undermined. Okay, and you know, Hitler himself said, he said this idea of perpetual prosperity through science is, he called it a Jewish plot designed to undermine the people's belief in the necessity for war. Now, it's not a Jewish plot, but it does undermine people's belief in the necessity of war. And that is one of the primary reasons why we need it. Okay, in addition to the actual benefits that it gives. Okay. Now, in other words, what I'm saying is this, is that we're not going to get oil from Mars. Okay, we may get inventions from Mars, you know, because Martians are going to be a group of technologically adept people in a challenging environment. They're going to come up with a lot of inventions. Okay, and those inventions will benefit the Earth. But the real benefit, the most vital benefit, put it that way, is not even that. It is that it will make clear, okay, that this idea that humanity is nations in a struggle for existence over limited resources, this is a false idea, and that there's no reason to be killing each other, fighting over provinces, when working together we can open up planets, okay? And that's the case for space. I'll take questions.
Wow. Thank you for this great lecture. I think we could discuss the whole night because you touched so many fields. Yeah, first of all, I would like to take the questions from the audience, and I would like to welcome Jerry Stone. He is sending you greetings. Maybe you know each other. Yes, and he says another great message from Larry Niven. The dinosaurs became extinct because they didn't have a space program. If we become extinct because we don't have a space program, it will serve us right. And Jack from Arizona is asking, are there rumblings within wealthy groups, think the United Arab Emirates, Mormon Church, investment class, etc., interested in bankrolling Mars settlements if costs drop low enough?
Well, okay. I think I get the drift of people, as it were, coming perhaps from a somewhat different place than most of us involved in the space enterprise are coming from, mostly people with a secular outlook and so forth. And here you have the Mormons and the United Arab Emirates and so forth. Well, I actually think that there's going to be a very large variety of space colonies, of Martian city-states, if you will. In other words, people say, what will the government be on Mars? I said, there's going to be a lot of different governments on Mars. And some of them will be founded by people who have ideas that many of us deem as peculiar. Others will fit across the political spectrum. I mean, the Mars Society recently had a contest to design Mars city-states, and we included the social systems, and they varied from social democratic to libertarian in their nature. There's arguments to be made for these. Experience will show which is the best. That is, the people who have the most workable ideas, their colonies will grow and prosper. They will attract immigrants. They will become the example not only for other colonies, but for Earth as well. Mars colonies will compete for immigrants. And that's why, by the way, I believe that a Martian tyranny is impossible, because no one would move there. This is an interesting thing. There isn't a consensus in America or in Europe that there should be more immigrants. A lot of people think there should be less. Some people think there should be more. This thing, it's about right. But the people who are against immigrants, if they really want to place the blame for the problem on anyone, they should place it on the people that made those countries good places to live. Because if these countries were not good places to live, no one would want to move there. That's how it is. In any case, in the case of Mars colonists, they're going to want immigrants, but once again, it's going to be those colonies that offer people with the best chance to realize their full human potential. And so, if you look at some of the most counterintuitive episodes of exploration in, say, the past 400 years, I would say these include the Pilgrims going to Massachusetts, the Mormons going to Utah, and the Jews going to Palestine. They were all motivated by, not by financial ideas. They were not done for a profit. They were motivated by transcendental purposes. That people were willing to risk life and everything they had to try to realize. With the basic goal being to create a place of their own where they could make their own world in all three cases. It's a fundamental form of freedom. In general, the people who have ideas that, or religions and so forth, that differentiate them from the majority of people around them are not popular and need a place to go. And if their ideas are workable, then their colonies succeed. If not, then they don't. But yeah, I think we're going to see quite a variety of experiments in new societies on Mars.
Here's another question from the audience, from Daddy Stone. Robert, what you said about the stupid idea that we need to fight each other for resources is essentially the message of the limits to growth by the Club of Rome, but they didn't even mention space. Actually, you answered this somehow, and I would like to add another question regarding this, because I was asked in an interview lately, will there be borders on Mars? This would be interesting what you say to this. Yeah.
Well, there may be, although, I mean, if two city-states are very close to each other, there may be borders of jurisdiction. But it's an awful big place. I mean, Mars is a planet with a surface area equal to all the land of the Earth put together. And so it's going to be quite some time before we need to dispute land titles on Mars.
Then two more questions, and then I give to Bernard. You talked about language, different languages, and the culture. So languages are culture, and we also want to bring art into space. How important do you think is to have art in space? Because I'm the space, the art coordinator for our organization, and therefore I'm very interested in this. I'm an artist too. So what's your answer to this?
Well, I mean, look, new cultures in space will certainly create new art. But if you're asking about the importance of art that relates to space today, I think it's extremely important. You know, culture is upstream of politics. It is upstream of economics. It determines what people want, and then they figure out how to do it. It is, the British poet Shelley said, poets are the legislators of mankind, okay? Because they create the vision of what is the good and the necessary, and you know, the now, look, Victor Hugo said, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. Okay, as if the idea has messengers that can carry it to humanity and then recruit to its banners. The idea recruits to its banners the forces necessary for its realization. Okay, now, you know, Mars Society does projects like the Desert Station, rover contests. We do some political work too to defend the various missions. But I think the most consequential thing we do is simply spread the vision. The vision recruits to its banners the people to realize it. We had a role in recruiting Elon Musk to make Mars his calling. Okay, and then once recruited, then you have this person of tremendous talent who is advancing the cause by leaps and bounds. Okay, and we need to recruit a lot more. Okay, and art, if we speak of art in the most expansive way, including the visual arts, film, books, novels, plays, whatever. I mean, in this day and age, film is the most powerful art form. But novels and things like this remain important. At least in the English-speaking world, poetry is not that important right now, but maybe if people start writing some poems that can grab people, then it would be. But in any case, these art forms, this is how we reach people, is how we present the vision, it's how we show people. The artists can make it possible for other people to see with their eyes what the artist can see with his or her mind. And that's extremely useful. So yeah, we need art.
Thank you. Bernard, give me. Do you have to unmute? You have to unmute, Bernard.
Yes,
You have to unmute.
yeah. Thank you, Robert. I wanted to follow what you said, which is very logical in arguments, and on the other hand, very confident in what science and technology and expansion can bring to us. But how can we make the case that the time has come, as Victor Hugo mentioned? Because, for instance, I looked at the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a very concrete consensus that we have between countries, and we look at some very near-term goals like 2030, and you know there is a UN agenda now, and we can make the case that, for instance, orbital space can contribute to many of these goals in monitoring the Earth, but it's much more difficult to make the case that expansion towards space is going really to contribute also to the near-term, benefit for humanity. So how can, and also you mentioned, okay, we are very hopeful about science, but on the other hand, if you look, the human societies are not rational. And the human development, we have a more disparity in wealth between countries, also within countries, more disparity in access to knowledge, in access to education. And still also there will be the effect of a global change that will create also some more migration and conflict. So how can we better integrate what space expansion can bring to really address the sustainable goals and really the daily life of people, and not only a few that have access to knowledge and or money or technology?
Well, look, I disagree that the idea that the advance of science and knowledge benefits only the rich. They may be the first that can acquire, certain advances. But look, the advance of medicine, the creation of modern medicine, which was done in the advanced countries, has benefited the entire world. Starting in the advanced countries and starting with the richest people in the advanced countries, but then the general population in the advanced countries, but now also in the developing sector. The creation, electricity, really, science and technology liberates people from slavery. It liberates them from the prospect of malnutrition, poverty, death. And while there is still some extreme poor people in the world, there are much fewer than there used to be. It may interest you to know, okay, and I perhaps am a little older than I look, but I'll give you a hint as to how old I am. That when I was a little boy, my parents would tell me that I needed to finish my breakfast because there were children hungry in Europe. Okay. In Europe. Okay. And those little Dutch kids are eating turnips. And I should be happy I got eggs. And well, no one talks about that anymore. Then it was children hungry in China. And well, do you know that the average Chinese right now eats more meat than the average American per capita? Okay.
Robert, is it's access to education also is very important. So more people are inventors, but you need to give them food, of course, but also education, and that's something that we have also to contribute by also this space expansion and the knowledge and inspiration we bring also to these basic problems of access to education for all.
Well, okay. Well, look, I very much like the name of your organization, the Space Renaissance Initiative. Okay, because what we're really talking about here is a human renaissance, okay, which therefore is a global project, and in fact will be a multi-global project, Of which space is simply, not simply, but to a certain extent is the banner of this project, the project of unlimited possibilities, the project of a vision of humanity, which is not saying, well, you know, the only solution for Africa is to have fewer Africans. No, the solution for Africa is for Africans to become as educated and free as people in the advanced sector, so they can become far more productive, and then they won't be poor. And in fact, then they will be contributing millions of inventions at the same per capita rate as the people in the advanced sector, which will accelerate global progress even more. We in the West can be proud of the fact that the large majority of inventions are coming from us, but we'd be much better off if everybody else was contributing at the same rate. So there it is. But as I say, space, look, in principle, humanity could stay on Earth. The resources of the Earth are infinite. They're infinite. Okay, that may seem contradictory because the Earth is a finite object, but so is a line segment. And a line segment has an infinite number of points in it. Okay, so there's an infinite number of things you can draw out of a line segment. You know, frankly, if you had a chemistry set with 1 kilogram of each of the 92 natural elements, you could make an infinite number of things out of that. You could make every possible compound.
To be smart.
I have one contradiction because we have not enough space, because you cannot construct buildings as high as to the sky. So if the humankind is growing and you think because with technical advance you can feed them and we can develop better products and better food, but the food has to grow somewhere on Earth. Okay, we can put it on the rooftop, but if you construct the buildings much more higher, then it will not grow anymore. So there's a contradiction, because and we will take the space from the animals, and we will have a more like coronavirus, pandemic, other pandemics, and I think this is a problem which has to be solved.
I'm saying the solution here is the human creativity. Yeah. But you see, the thing is this: the line segment, to someone who doesn't know mathematics, it may seem evident that there's only a finite number of points in a line segment. Okay, but anyone could see that there's an infinite number of points in a line that extends infinitely. Okay, that's the reason why the expansion of space is necessary to make this point clear, that there is, look, the Earth comes with an infinite sky. So we have an infinite amount of room. Okay, and as far as some of these other things are concerned, I mean, do you know, okay, there's more forest in the United States today than there was in 1950. I would not be at all surprised if there's more forest in Germany today than there was in 1950. But there certainly is in the United States, because last year, the state of Iowa grew more corn than the entire United States did in 1950. That is, as agriculture becomes more productive due to superior crop strains and all sorts of improved techniques, the amount of land needed for it is less. And so there is more land available for wild nature. I think, you know, look, resources, there's no such thing as a natural resource. There's only natural raw materials. It is human creativity that turns materials into resources. I mean, think about the Bronze Age for a minute. Okay, for several thousand years after people invented metals, the only metals they had were copper, bronze, brass, because these were the easiest to smelt. Now, copper is geochemically quite rare, okay? It's only was useful to ancient civilizations because there's natural processes that concentrate some amounts of it into concentrated ores. But worldwide, copper is extremely rare. Iron, on the other hand, is far more common. But until they invented furnaces that could actually smelt iron, there was no iron, okay? But once they did, then the price of metal, the availability of metal became 1,000 times greater. And so we had the iron and steel, okay? And most civilization was built with that. And then guess what? In the 20th century, people discovered that they could take dirt and produce a new metal out of it called aluminum, okay? Which was unknown, I mean, unknown to science before about 1820 and unknown to consumers until the 20th century, okay? So this stuff, which, you know, you go into any real antique store, you won't find anything made of aluminum. Didn't exist. For those people, aluminum was dirt. Okay, uranium, of course, was not a resource until we invented nuclear power. Okay, silicon, with which we're turning sunlight to electricity. Deuterium is not yet a resource, but it will be once we have fusion power. And you know, I mean, a kilogram of water, the amount of deuterium in it, is equal to 350 kilograms of gasoline. Okay, it's incredible. So there's an infinite number of points in the line segment, but people don't believe that. And people, you know, going to world wars to kill each other over coal, which now everybody's saying we have to figure out a way to just keep it in the ground. That is, this most important resource in the world, coal, is now something that we're trying to stop using. And you know, they couldn't conceive of that. Well, coal could be replaced by oil and gas and uranium and deuterium and sunlight and you know, so that's the thing here, and that's the project.
Yeah,
Thank you.
can I jump in?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I think we are talking the same language because we are humanist. And I think both, I read some of your books, Robert, and I think you have a deep humanist philosophy in your background. And all what you develop and the concepts you say come from this very strong philosophical setup. And the same is for us at Space Renaissance. We are based on the humanist philosophy, and we call ourselves astronautic humanist. And also, I think it should be something more simple, maybe space humanist simply, that will attract more people to understand what we say and so on, or cosmic humanists. However, basing our reasoning on a humanist philosophy, I think we are interested to evolution. So evolution works by differentiation, and when we talk about an intelligence species, we talk about cultural differentiation. So now the human society is globalized, and so to grow and evolve further, we need to expand in a greater ecological niche. And if thinking about evolution, in our thesis one of our Congress, we talked about the Kardashev scale of the types of civilization. And so Kardashev said that the capability to fully use the energy of the sun in space is a parameter to classify a civilization as a type 2 civilization. Bob, you added another parameter. It's the capability to use the resources of the solar system. That's very important too. And Carl Sagan added a third concept, that is capability to manage the information in the solar system. Myself, I had the presumption to add a fourth parameter, that is the capability to assure 100% inclusive society. The possibility of social growth for everybody to reach the higher levels of the Maslow scale. Okay, I think everybody knows about the Maslow pyramid of the needs from the very basic to the highest one. So here we come to what Bernard said before about the SDG, the Sustainable Development Growth goals of the UN agenda of 2030. If we read that 17 goals, they are the goals of 100% inclusive society, giving to everybody the possibility not only to satisfy the basic needs, that was the old Marxist theory. If we everybody can eat, everybody can have a home, everybody can study, and so on, the very basic. But if we go up and we differentiate to, because each individual has his own type of intelligence and type of attitude. Think about the Gartner types of intelligence and the Stephen Wolf types of attitudes and so on. And you get a matrix of millions of different attitudes and aspirations, I guess, aspiration. So to do that, we really need to expand in the solar system, because only by differentiation and by having the possibility to grow further, even if we can agree that the oil industrial paradigm will not end because the oil is finished on Earth. It will end because something else is growing in scientific and technology and so on, for sure. But however, we cannot think that the resources of our planet will be enough for 1 trillion people. So we have to start expanding, and the coronavirus already demonstrated that even if we maybe didn't reach the bars of the cage so far, however, we can have a very, very worse life, thinking about the pollution, about all the threats that civilization is now exposed to, and therefore we arrive to the conclusion that even if the resources of this planet could be not still ended, however, we need to expand in order to start benefiting of the resources of the asteroids, of the moon, of Mars, and to have more energy and more resources and more capability to experiment artificial ecosystems and to grow up in our capabilities. So, okay, I'm sure we agree on all of these concepts. However, I just would try to put them on the table just to.
I basically agree. I mean, look, Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones, and the oil age is not going to end because we ran out of oil. Okay, it's going to end because we have better things, just like we went from stone to metal tools because they were better. Nobody uses stone knives anymore, and so forth. And we're not going to run out of the earth. Okay, we are going to access vastly greater possibilities by going into space. And of course, we'll continue to have civilization on Earth, but it will be part of a much grander and bigger civilization with much greater potentials. But I do want to say, you know, I mean, look, coronavirus is a setback for humanity, but it doesn't compare to the various plagues that hit humanity in the past. We have been able to deal with it, both due to the extremely quick development of vaccines, and as well as, frankly, a population that is healthier in general because of much better nutrition than in prior ages. Do you know, in ancient Rome, of course, the population was, dozens of diseases were endemic among the population, and malaria was frequently fatal to ancient Romans because they were so weak from all these other diseases and malnutrition. Whereas I think that coronavirus, in addition to being vastly more difficult to fight without our knowledge of the germ theory of disease in general and the development of vaccines quickly, it would have been far more dangerous to the population had our population been as malnourished as people were in previous centuries. Yeah, I mean, look, things happen as a result of having a more advanced civilization, but the benefits of that far outweigh these defects. Yeah, if we didn't have global travel, coronavirus would have traveled a lot slower. Okay, but because we had global travel, we had a global scientific project underway with people of various nations working together, developing vaccines, all this kind of stuff, which ultimately proved far more of a plus than the minus.
Yep.
So I remain a technological optimist. I remain a believer in the idea of progress. I think progress is real. I think the people who like to point to the various harms that we have endured as a result of progress are missing the big picture entirely.
Here's another question from the audience. Just a second, I lost the question. If you could give a short update about Mars for the non-that distant future. You've talked about exploration Mars prior to settlement, and would you like to give an update on Mars Direct? Well, in this case, I would like to mention the Mars Society Convention to our audience. It will take place from the 14th to the 17th of October. It's a great event, a very interesting program, and please join the convention. Yeah, and your answer, no?
Well, yeah. Look, you know, things are happening. The most profound development affecting human exploration of Mars is going to be the advent of the SpaceX Starship. Another thing that is happening is looks like the SLS will also be flying within a year or so, which is a heavy lift vehicle. But I think I was actually involved in the preliminary design of what is now called SLS at Martin Marietta in 1988. It's a shuttle-derived heavy lift launch vehicle. It represents 1980s ideas. It would have been great if we had introduced it in the mid-90s as we had planned. It's now coming along about a quarter century past that date. And so I think it's possibly improbable that it will play a major role in the future because it's being introduced at a point when vehicles to make it obsolete are being introduced. But If the Starship is unsuccessful, then yes, there'll be SLS, in which case you can send 40-ton payloads on direct trajectories to Mars, which is what it was designed to do. But I think the Starship, well, first of all, Starship could be used as a fully reusable heavy lift launch vehicle and do Mars direct off of it in much the same way as one would have off of SLS, or the Ares, as we called it. Or you could invoke the mission architecture that Elon Musk talks about, which is refueling the Starship on orbit with a variety of tanker Starships, and then sending it all the way to Mars, and then refueling it on the surface of Mars to sending it back. I think sending Starships all the way to Mars is a great idea if the goal is colonization. Because if Starship's going one way to Mars, then its tremendous capacity works in your favor. Using Starship as an ascent vehicle to come back from Mars is problematical because it's so big. It requires a great deal of propellant, which is why I have argued with Elon to convince him to try to develop a mini Starship, pretty much the same kind of thing, except downsized by a factor of 5. It could be launched as the upper stage on a Falcon 9 and create a fully reusable medium lift launch vehicle, but also it could be launched to orbit fully fueled by a full-size Starship, fly to Mars, and it'd be much easier to refuel that for the return mission. But colonization is primarily a one-way trip, as opposed to exploration. So I love Starship as exploration vehicle, as a colonization vehicle. As an exploration vehicle, what it probably means is that what you probably want to do is send 4 or 5 Starships to one site to, and maybe with robots, build up a major Mars base there before you send the one with the people. And then, in fact, you've already engaged in situ resource utilization. You've already filled up some of the tanks of some of the landed Starships with methane and oxygen propellant, and you can refuel with that. But to go home, or you could take one of them home. But I think in general, if I was using Starship as my sole tool in a human Mars architecture, I'd probably want to send 5 to Mars for every one I returned.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Robert, I could talk with you the whole night. I have more questions, but I am afraid you have no more time.
Okay.
One last question. If you have the possibility to travel to Mars, would you go?
Yes.
Very good. Yeah.
I think all of us will go.
I wouldn't go to Mars. To the moon, yes, but to Mars.
To Mars, okay.
Too far. We really thank you, and we are really honored that you took the time for us to talk with us. And we are looking forward to the Mars Society convention. To our audience, I would like to say, and I have to apologize, the Facebook is not working, it seems, worldwide. I had really many people who wanted to come, but Facebook is not working, Instagram is not working, and also not WhatsApp. I don't know what's happened.
However, this will be on YouTube.
It will be on YouTube, and we will spread it afterwards. But I know that many people wanted to watch the session, and they can see it afterwards. I wanted to mention we are also a non-profit organization, so please donate. We want to grow. We want to bring people into space, civilian people. We want to bring art into space, and we also plan a project together with the Mars Society. And I wanted to mention our next webinar. It's on the 18th of October. Brett Hofstad will talk about the Goodnight Moon Base. And we have also other webinars in future. Marie-Louise Häuser, Ena Larsen, and also Dr. Seth Shostak from City Institute will talk this year to us. So please stay tuned and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Robert Zubrin, for this interesting webinar. I hope we can win you next year again to talk to us.
Be happy to do it.
It would be a pleasure for us.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
So thank you. Thank you. And we'll be part of the Mars Convention. And also we are going to talk about Mars at the International Astronomical Congress in Dubai, where the Space Renaissance will be represented. So more to come in this month of October, which is really a strong space month. Today, 4th of October, anniversary of the Sputnik launch.
Ah, yes.
What is happening? Let's celebrate. Thank you so much, Sabina.
Thank you.